Aside from seeing my family again when I was in the States, one of the best parts, or the second best part of it, was bringing home this particular DSLR, the veritable Nikon D40. And it's a DSLR that gets a lot of reviews and gets a lot of views from many photography enthusiasts who still believe in the CCD censored cameras or the pre-CMOS sensor cameras. Now, one thing about photography that a lot of people forget about is the fun factor. You can talk about cameras all you want, you can talk about features all you want, but seriously, nobody really talks about the fun factor anymore. And that's one of the main reasons why I got into photography in the first place. You should have fun doing something that you like and hopefully making some money out of it. And that's exactly what got me into photography in the first place, is having fun doing it. And along with that, I gravitate more towards cameras that give me that fun factor. Now, without having to sound like a review of the Nikon D40, which there's millions of it, I'd like to focus more on precisely the fun factor, something that admittedly I never knew about the D40 when it first came out in 2006. At the time, I was already using a Nikon D70. It was practically the first digital camera that I've had in my hands and I've had the chance to use professionally, and I've been doing magazine covers with that. I've done magazine articles with that, and I've never had a chance to use the D40 up until this year. And now that I have one and I've been shooting one, I'm rediscovering what it was like to actually have fun with a camera, or a camera that was fun to use. And so, what makes a camera fun to use? Now, let's go over the D40 and its form factor. First of all, it's a really tiny camera by today's standards, or even back then. The D40 was a really small camera, but one thing about it is that it's an interchangeable lens camera. You can practically use any Nikkor lenses on this particular platform. And in fact, what I have right here is the Nikkor 50mm 1.8D. So these lenses will only autofocus when you're using an internal focus motor, which many of the DX models of Nikon have already done away with. So in short, this thing will not autofocus with the D40. There's nothing wrong with that. That's precisely why I like the lens and camera body combination, is because it's as close to a manual camera that I would ever get without having it to be analog. So it's a digital camera, but the experience is totally analog. Let's just say it simulates the feel of analog photography. So it's been a while since I shot film, but I've been shooting film since 1976. So that's a really, really long time. And I've been used to the mechanics and basically the principles behind analog photography before I even held my first digital camera. And when I did with the Nikon D70, I was still shooting it more like I was shooting a film camera, or the principles of film photography were the same things that I used when I turned digital in 2006, 2007. Now, as it is, the D40 satisfies my own needs when it comes to a camera. Aside from the compact size, this is the only camera that I know of that has a really full grip. When you hold the D40, it's like you're holding a film camera with a motor drive attached to it. It doesn't lose any of that analog feeling. It feels really great in the hand. It has a little bit of heft, but it's not too bulky or heavy. It's just the perfect combination. So when you hold it, it feels very secure in your hands, and it feels like you're actually using a motorized film camera. Another thing that makes this camera really fun to shoot are the layout of the controls. The simplicity makes it really something you can just pick up and start shooting, especially for someone who's had a very extensive photography background. It's something I can pick up and use right off the bat, which is exactly what happened when I received this particular camera. All I needed to do was to turn it on and tweak the camera to the settings that I like. So there's just one main knob on top and a few buttons and another navigation button, and of course your control dial. That's it. There's no flip up screen, which I totally dislike. I'm not a big fan of the flip up screen. That's about it. It's really quite simple to use. Now, one of the first things I do whenever I have an electronic camera, it doesn't matter if it's film or digital, is turn off the beep. Now, that particular beep is something that, I can do away with, and it's something that separates professionals from the mere amateur photographers. And why is that? People like using the beep just to have an audible warning for something, especially when it comes to focusing. And that's about the most amateur thing you can do, is to turn on the beep so that your ears are focusing on the photograph and not your eyes. So that's the most idiotic thing, I think, is to train your ears to focus when it should be your eyes that are doing the focusing. So whenever I shoot, and since this is practically a manual focus lens camera, I don't really need to hear that annoying beep. Look at it this way. People or amateurs are focusing by listening to the beep, not by looking at a sharp or clear image. And see, that's the disconnect. When you turn the beep on, when you have an audible signal that tells you, hey, this isn't focused, that's just stupid. Okay, next. Even as an entry-level camera, this Nikon D40 actually has features that any professional would appreciate. One feature that I really look for in a camera is the ability to back button focus. Meaning, if you're using an autofocus lens, you don't need to keep pressing the shutter release button for the lens to focus. All that one needs to do is press the button located at the back of the camera, hence the name back button focus. And what that does is your focus is independent of the exposure, which is basically the function of the shutter release button. So whenever you press the shutter release button, it activates the camera's built-in light meter to determine exposure, which is your shutter speed and your aperture. And sometimes if you're using auto ISO, it's going to alter that too. At the same time, it shifts your focus to wherever the camera thinks it needs to focus. But with the back button, all I need to do is press the back button and dial in my focus, and then worry about my exposures later on. So the focus is totally independent of the exposure whenever you use the back button focus. So that's a good thing. Yes, since you've already heard it, here's the shutter sound again. One of the things that I like about the Nikon D40 shutter is that it's very reassuring. It tells you that, hey, I got the shot. That's part of the joy of holding a camera. I remember back in the days of film, we would always listen to the shutter sound of any new camera model or mechanical camera just to listen in and feel that shutter breaking. And that satisfies my need for both the tactile feel of the shutter and knowing that it actually releases. So whenever the shot breaks, you can hear it and you can feel it. And in summary, if you're someone like me who's had really bulky film cameras or carried around bulky film cameras as a journalist, a photojournalist, and a professional photographer, then you will appreciate something as small and compact as a Nikon D40 just to have fun with. I remember back in the day, for me to have fun, or for me to shoot casually, I would take out the old all-metal Nikon FM2 and try to shoot a birthday party or try to shoot a sunset with that heavy, bulky machine. But nowadays, all I need to do is pack this thing with a choice of the kit lens or this 51.8D lens, and I'm off to the races. And truly, this thing is such a joy and so much fun to shoot with that I'm so thankful to have, and it's something that gets a lot of use. It's an instrument for me to decompress, and it's a camera to have fun with, and that's really the bottom line. People can talk about all the high-tech features, all the cool things about a new camera, all the megapixels and all that crap, but At the end of the day, you need to have something that's actually fun to shoot with. And the Nikon D40 is one such camera. In not so many words, I love it. I really, really love it. That's about it for my rambling for this particular episode of The Shutter Maniac. I'm Direct Abs, and until next time, make serendipity happen.